Welcome to today's session, and this is a very important session from the third phase. And as we start all sessions with invocation to God Almighty to give us the as prayers so that the objective of our course is achieved, we start with Saraswati Vanna. With this invocation of God Almighty, we invoke the blessings of the universal intelligence that the objective of our course is achieved. And we are very grateful to Dr. MD Venkatesh, Vice Chancellor of the Manipal Academy of Higher Education, for agreeing to become the first speaker. In fact, he is an important person of the ENT fraternity, and he will be who has risen to the vice chancellor level. We scanned whole of India and we couldn't find any person who is risen to this high levels. And so his biodata is as follows. Dr. Venkatesh graduated from Mysore Medical College in 1978 with an excellent academic record of, and he acquired his MS ENT from Mumbai University in 1986, and he was commissioned to Army Medical Corps in 1989, and he took many trainings and was gradually served the Armed Forces Department of Medical Education for 38 years. He has been assessor of MCI in various committees, NBE and ICMR and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. He is also an advisor and Defense Research and Development Organization on Indigenous Cochlear Implant Development Program and Chief Clinical Coordinator for the clinical trials of the Indigenous Cochlear Implant Development Program approved by DGCI. He is a keen researcher and contributed numerous chapters in the field of otolaryngology and medical education. And he has been the governor in the board of governors for the Indian Academy of Otolaryngology and Head and Neck Surgery, and also a member of the Medical Advisory Council for newly commissioned National Medical Commission. He is a member of the General Assembly of Indian Council of Cultural Relations, Government of India. So we can understand that there cannot be a better person than him for inaugurating our course. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. At the outset, let me thank Dr. Unnikrishnan, Dr. Bedi, and all the organizing committee of this program on implementation of competency-based medical education in otolaryngology. And my today's talk will focus, on a general aspect about competency-based medical education, and just the evolution of it, in brief, and the current situation in the country, and my concerns, and with the current, state in which the competency-based medical education is being delivered. And the other aspect is, I thought I would take this in this forum and give my perspective on medical education with respect to the National Education Policy 2020. This will be a brief perspective. I have deliberately avoided speaking about implementation of CBME in otolaryngology because the entire program and is built around it. I hope this overview will benefit all of us. It's kind of a recollection of what has happened over a period of time, and the genesis, evolution, and acceptance of CBME in Indian context, and also where we are at the current moment. So I once again thank the organizers for inviting me, and it's literally a great pleasure for me to be amongst my own fraternity and sharing my views with you all. So, the CBME is not a new concept. In fact, the earliest reference goes back to around 1950s. And in the real sense, it crystallized about 50 years ago. And it attained prominence towards the turn of the century. In many Western countries, this was a dominant approach to postgraduate medical education to begin with, surprisingly. And, the entire concept centered around outcome-based education and masterly learning. That means, the outcomes were predetermined, the teaching learning methods were, focused around the outcomes, and the mastery, was focused towards, getting the competencies and the skills associated with it. And most people believe that the CBME has the potential to transform contemporary medical education. And the intended outcome of competency-based competency-based medical education is preparing a professional who can practice medicine with a predefined level in accordance with the local conditions and local needs. I think the 2 points that needs to be looked at: local conditions and local needs. And the rationale, as has been described by experts in this field, has been, that CBME focuses on outcomes which are predetermined, and it emphasizes on abilities or skills, and all the more reason that it de-emphasizes time-based learning, which has been the hallmark of the contemporary medical education that was going on till now. And from teacher-centeredness, the medical education will move towards learner-centeredness as we go forward in implementation of CBME. So when we define competency, it can be seen that it is an observable activity of a health professional integrating multiple components of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values. And Epstein defines it as a habitual and judicious use of communication, knowledge, technical skills, clinical reasoning, emotion, values, and reflection in daily practice for the benefit of the individual and the community that is being served by that profession. So some of the terms which are used, in consonance with the CBME are entrustable professional activities. I know that I'm just reinforcing some of the thoughts which most of you have already known or have read about or have undergone training in. So entrusted professional activities is identifying crucial activities that constitute a specialty, activities which should only be carried out by a trained specialist. The other way of looking at it is identifying critical activities that constitute the role of a primary physician. This is the entire essence of what we would want to know as an Indian medical graduate, that he should fulfill the role of a primary physician, and the activities of which all of us should agree can only be carried out by a trained doctor is what he is supposed to do in the community that he chooses to serve. So milestones are the ones which clearly define and facilitate this determination by providing a roadmap to the program. And this allows us to describe the development of a competence as we look at it. And we are all aware that the number of competencies has been predetermined, prescribed by the Medical Council of India in phase 1, 2, and 3, encircling many subjects and specialities, and also affords a reasonable amount of integration as we go forward. And to describe in a shorter term is an outcome-based approach to design, implementation, assessment of medical education program using an organized framework of competencies. I'm not going into the details of the competencies. These are very well prescribed in the booklets that have been published by Medical Council of India. And most of the faculty in medical colleges have undergone a preparatory course, and many of you have undergone an advanced course and also a refreshment course as in the delivery of competency-based medical education. So quickly looking at traditional versus CBME, in the traditional model, the curriculum which was developed first and with prescribed educational objectives and the teaching learning methods were imparted, and then the assessment was carried out. However, there's a slight difference in competency-based medical education. There has been a systematic review of the health needs and health systems of the community, and then the competencies have been and outcomes have been predetermined. Then the curriculum has been developed, which will reflect in customized way of delivery of these competencies for development and assessment, and finally the competencies are certified. So in very small terms, the contemporary medical education had a fixed length with variable outcomes, whereas competency-based medical education aims at providing variable length of learning period with a defined outcome to the students. So some of the major differences, just to recollect, in the competency-based medical education, the advancement of students is based on the students acquiring the mastery, whereas in the traditional methods, students advance based on overall coursework, projects, homework, and more focus was on summative evaluation, whereas the competency-based education focuses more on formative evaluation. Second important difference is in the pacing. The students progress at different paces at different areas and have multiple opportunity to demonstrate mastery. Whereas in a traditional method, the students move at a pace set by the instructor, in which it is a teacher-centric approach. If they do not match the pace at which the teacher moves around and the content which is delivered by the teacher, they get low grades or move forward with the class, either with a fail or a repeat, because most of it, the evaluation is based on a summative evaluation. Majority of the performance assessment is based on a single day's performance. Instruction is developmentally appropriate, customized to match the learning needs, and increasingly challenging. This is about the competency-based medical education, that it is developmentally appropriate. That means keeping the development stage of the individual, the instruction will be appropriate to that, customized to the matching learning needs, because we have already predetermined the learning needs, and therefore the instruction is also customized. And as it goes forwards, it becomes increasingly challenging. Whereas in the traditional method, instruction is standardized for the whole class. That means there's no individual focus. The entire instruction is standardized for the whole class, and the learning standards are designated by the grade level. The learning time here in competency-based medical education is flexible, and it is designed to encourage extended learning opportunities and added support, etc. This is very important to realize here, that the learning is flexible, and it also encourages students to have multiple learning opportunities and ability or the chances to develop this mastery, and in additional support that is required in terms of faculty attention or in terms of additional learning material or inculcating self-directed learning in the process. With one of the major objectives of CBME is towards making the student a lifelong learner. So here on the other hand, on the traditional method, the schedule is one size fits all with little or no individualization or flexibility. So why was it that need for competency-based medical education felt in India? The major goal of medical education is to train and prepare physicians to be locally competent and globally relevant. The medical education system for India for long relied on a curriculum where the teaching, learning method, and assessment activities predominantly focused on knowledge domain. All of us will bear with me, the old timers like me, we've seen that for a period of time, the focus was on the domain of knowledge, neglecting the other domains. Medical school graduates, while having fund of medical knowledge, we all often seen that they lack the core skills necessary for clinical practice. And this was hastened, perhaps exaggerated by the need for the medical graduates to clear the NEET PG examination to be able to get into a postgraduate program, which often seemed to be the only objective in the minds of maximum number of medical students. The community was forgotten, the service part of it was forgotten, and everything. And at the time when they were supposed to consolidate their knowledge and skills while doing internship, they only concentrated on solving MCQs. And the internship was a forgotten period of training, which perhaps made a medical student mature into a competent doctor. And also, it was felt over a period of time by all the policymakers that there was a huge gap between medical education and the healthcare delivery in the country. So the other point that was looked at was the decline in competency levels of recent medical school graduates, and also we also have been lamenting upon for a period of time that over-reliance on laboratory investigation to reach proper diagnosis and they've often neglected clinical skills and critical thinking skills. And also was seen was poor communication skills and minimal competence to deal with ethical issues. Therefore, the ethics and ethical practice of medicine, the third component of the affective domain of empathy, sympathy, and the good communication skills was getting neglected or relegated to a minor area in the delivery of medical education. Also, we also saw rising incidents of physical attacks against doctors, and therefore this made us to think that we need to focus more on affecting domain, development of professionalism, skills, and ethical behavior. So when the policymakers thought that yes, there's a need for a change, it didn't happen overnight. It happened over a period of time. In fact, many of us have been speaking about it, that there is a need for a change, a total overhaul of the delivery of medical education system in the early 2000, 2005, 6. There was a lot of discussion, and finally, Medical Council of India in 2008 decided that yes, there is a need for us to go forward and overhaul the system as we go forward. And at that time, some of the prerequisites that we all looked at for initiating CBM in India was as leadership and administrative factors, looking mandate from the statutory council, which at that time was the Medical Council of India, a supportive administration and management, be it be publicly funded medical schools or privately funded medical schools. For a critical success of CBM in India, there was a need for acceptance, supportive administration, and supportive management. And there was need for a complete overhaul of infrastructure and learning resources, and a significant amount of financial support was required. The faculty factors which were at that time addressed to were there was a need for a trained faculty members in various aspects of CBME because it was a new concept, a new process. Therefore, the training component had to be reinforced. And more importantly, it was felt that there was a need for committed faculty members for the CBME to be successful. Amongst the curricular factors which we looked at was an organized and systematically framed curriculum, formulation of subject-specific entrustable professional activities, identification of competencies in each of these EPAs, developmental milestones, and there was also a need for validating through experts, selection of appropriate and standardized assessment tools. This was very, very critical. You could not use old conventional assessment tools to assess a modern delivery of CBME curriculum. And also we need to resort to programmatic assessment and focus more towards formative assessment rather than summative assessment. Teaching learning activities had to be aligned with assessment process. Emphasis was thought to be on learning experience through feedback or reflection, and there was simulations and standardized patients towards getting a required amount of training and reinforcement. And amongst the students, factors that was kept in mind was sensitized students towards CBME, and their sensitization was also required towards desired competencies. If there was internalization of the students about having to acquire the desired competency, the outcomes are definitely better, and also a need for reflection and consolidate the competencies that they earned. Students were also had to be aware about the frequency, settings, and nature of assessment. So what was important was also an informed and a competent faculty, a very, very robust, well-structured curriculum, and of course, a sensitized and willing student to go through the new developmental process of competency-based medical education. Keeping this in mind, the Medical Council of India had started many initiatives. It created a vision document. It created a structure for a communication flow with nodal and regional centers. Core Curriculum Committee sat through and deliberated for almost close to a decade in development of the curriculum. There was a reconciliation group, there was an expert group, and the faculty development initiatives were taken with basic and revised and basic courses, introduction of ADCOM, introduction of advanced course, and CISP. And ultimately, a graduate medical regulation was promulgated in the year 2019 to replace the old one, which was almost 2 decades old. That previous graduate medical regulation was in 1998. And MCI went ahead and produced some exemplary, very good competency booklets to bring in the required knowledge base for us to implement the competency-based medical education. I would like to emphasize here that many of us felt that perhaps the implementation was a bit hurried, and we were a little unprepared to suddenly shift out from contemporary medical education to a competency-based medical education on a fixed timeline of September 2019. And MCI initiatives with regard to production of the vision document was, it's a really good document. It studied in detail the global trend, and also it did a very good situation analysis of the Indian context, and also identified the locally relevant and feasible changes. I would like to underline the word feasible, because this is the most important component which decides relevance and feasibility are the two things which define whether the program is going to succeed or not going to succeed. So the road ahead, as we see, I just gave you an overview of what has happened and over the period of time, and then the implementation happened in 2019 September. The first batch of medical students got into the MBBS program to be taught with the competency-based medical education. So the road ahead, all of us thought at that time was, yes, this was a time to move on with early positive signs towards curricular reforms. And it was decided to implement it across the MBBS programs across the country, over 550 colleges. And what we felt at that time was, as we move forward, as we started implementing, the individual institutes would do an outcome analysis and present the data. And also, as we go forward, define the outcome quality indicators to be benchmarked against these quality indicators, the success or failure of the program, and the ability of the students to acquire the required competencies were to be assessed against. And also, the thought was in the mind that these program evaluation should be done centrally, and also the institutions centrally, and also at the institution on level 3 of Kirkpatrick model on impact analysis. So the next aspect was, once the CBME was fully implemented in the undergraduate program, it was supposed to move towards competency-based postgraduate education. This was with the ultimate aim of creating a 21st century doctors for our country. So the current status, it's time for us to take a look back at what has happened since September 19. The phase 1 was implemented in September 19, but unfortunately, I think this is a reality that all of us need to look at. Many institutions were not prepared at that particular time to implement the competency-based medical education. We all know that about the differing standards of medical schools across the country, and also the gaps which needed to be filled before we actually implemented the program in September 19. That was part 1 of little underpreparedness, and the part 2 was the entire process was interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So this, perhaps for the 9 months, 8 to 9 months, the students are away from the school. After an exposure of around 5 months of CBME, the students were off the campus. And something which had to be learned, skills which had to be learned, were absolutely being taught on an online mode. So it again reverted, the entire thing reverted back to the old system of knowledge, predominantly knowledge-based delivery of academics. So this was a bit of a setback. I would say it's a major setback that the country had to face. Not only the country, entire world has to face. But at a time, it was critical time for us when we were implementing phase 1 of the CBME, this has happened. Both the students and faculty feedback for phase 2 has remained incomplete, because the phase 1 students have just about come back to the campus, just about come back, 1st of December. as mandated. And they are supposed to do a hurried 2 months cover up for the things that they missed over a period of 9 months, and then appear for the exam and then graduate on to phase 2. Therefore, whatever feedback that the phase 1 was supposed to provide to the faculty and the organization and the institutions regarding the gaps in the implementation of phase 1 has sadly been incomplete. So as I said, phase 1 is just about due, and phase 2 has been delayed by almost 1 year. We were otherwise would have started the phase 2 a year ago. So not a year ago, it was 6 months ago. So level of preparedness and readiness of implementation is now, I am little skeptical about, after having a gap of about 8-9 months, the level of preparedness and readiness of implementation of phase 2 is something that we need to do it at a faster pace now. Firstly, do a quick reassessment about our preparedness and readiness, and then do the gap analysis, make the requisite changes, and be ready to implement phase 2 of the program. And we need to critically look at the infrastructure availability. I know that many institutions are well prepared, and I also know that some of the institutions may be less prepared as we go forward in our readiness to implement phase 2. And preparedness for phase 3 is also interrupted. And much of the phase 2 and phase 3 required a lot of coordination between various clinical departments and preclinical, paraclinical departments, which so far has not happened because of the students were away, even the faculty, the lockdown, and various other problems inherent with this COVID-19 pandemic has impeded the progress that was expected to be. So what is it that we can look at now? The efficacy of implementation of CBME can only be assessed after at least one cycle is complete. That means successfully, uninterrupted. If we have implemented phase 1, 2, and 3, then only we can make a realistic assessment as to where we reached, where we started, where we reached, and what have we achieved, and what were the shortfalls. Therefore, after that, we could review the process and offer the course correction that is required. Also important was this critical period of after 3, we were expecting that it would generate a lot of research publications and also strong evidences towards implementation of the CBME program. Therefore, one envisages that only after the entire cycle is complete, we could review the entire program and then strengthen the program as we go forward. And I personally believe that the process is in the making. And for us to consolidate and offer a reasonably strong competency-based medical education, we need to complete a couple of cycles to consolidate our entire experience and also bring in uniformity and standardization of CBME across all more than 500 medical institutes of the country. So this is what is my assessment of the current situation of CBME. And I mean, this does not take away the point that this has been a major policy decision. We all welcome it. Nobody expected COVID to come in and interrupt the process. Nobody expected that there would be interruption for a period of close to 9 months, and then there would be a, hurried, concentrated efforts towards, giving the competencies to the students in phase 1. The preparedness of phase 2 and phase 3 would be interrupted. Notwithstanding all these things, we need to remain optimistic. We need to remain committed. We need to, showcase our intent that we're going to take this, delivery of competency-based medical education in its true sense towards success as we go forward. A little bit of thought process. I thought, since I did a little study on the national education policy, I thought I would give a little perspective on medical education with regard to national education policy. It's important, all of us medical educators and all of us, perhaps a quick recollect would be in order. The vision of NEP 2020 is alignment with Global Sustainable Development Goals. So the prescribed Global Sustainable Development Goals have been kept at the center of focus in NEP 2020. And it prescribes an integrated yet flexible approach to medical education with multiple entry and exit options, perhaps not relevant to medical education at this current time, but definitely for general education and technical education. It It focuses on a multidisciplinary approach in higher education. This is something that puts a thought in mind with standalone medical institutions as we go forward. It focuses on high quality research, which is equally relevant in health sciences. It facilitates transformation of the education system, and we are in the threshold of transforming the education system, therefore aligning with the national education policy and our intended change from conventional medical education to competency-based medical education is definitely an important aspect. And of course, facilitating the national development, which is a common goal for all of us. The major challenges for medical education with regard to NEP, I would look at alignment of the current National Medical Commission with NEP 20. I am a little happy that the structure of the National Medical Commission is more or less in consonance with the structure of the Higher Education Regulatory Authority as it is prescribed in the National Education Policy. The point about light but tight regulatory control. All of us have always felt that the regulator, in our case, the Medical Council of India, was too tough regulator. There was inconsistencies in regulation, there were gaps in regulation, and we all felt that perhaps, we were always talking about the trust deficit between various medical institutions, mostly private medical institutions, alongside with the Medical Council of India. The NMC Act tried to address most of these, shortcomings, and we only hope that the major defined objective of the national education policy of light but tight regulatory control is also adopted by the National Medical Commission. One point that which is still unclear is multidisciplinary approach in higher education, which perhaps would be a major challenge in aligning medical education because most of our medical institutions are unitary institutions, predominantly dealing with medical education only. And how we would be integrating multidisciplinary approach into in the medical education is a major challenge which needs to be looked at. And also, it's important for the institutions and the policymakers of the medical education to be in tune with higher education and technical education institutions. The entire idea of NEP has been to produce a good, thoughtful, well-rounded, creative graduates who will benefit the community in which they choose to serve from. This precisely is this is the key goal of the new CBME 2. And there are other important things that all of us need to give in mind, though we have been able to introduce some of these aspects of social sciences, liberal arts, and multidisciplinary elements in terms of providing electives. I think there is a need for us to integrate like social science and liberal arts in a much larger fashion when we are delivering medical education. Now, a quick look at the verticals of the Higher Education Commission of India. So one vertical leads only at Regulatory Council. The next one looks only at the accreditation. Third vertical leads with the grants, and the fourth vertical leads with the professional standard setting bodies or the erstwhile regulatory bodies controlling a myriad of regulatory affairs. This is precisely on a similar line. The NMC also has been reorganized, and because we are delinking the major four function of erstwhile Medical Council of India, which had amalgamated our major four functions into one system. Now it has clearly delineated into four verticals. So institutional restructure and consolidation, national education policies talks about all higher education institutions, including technical HEIs, to become multidisciplinary by 2040. This, I feel, is a major challenge for medical education. We need more clarity on this. What will happen to standalone unitary medical colleges when we look at all technical HEIs to become multidisciplinary? So there is perhaps needs more clarity and more definement in terms of what do we mean by multidisciplinary institutions. So all universities will be classified under research intensive university, teaching intensive university, and autonomous degree granting colleges. Deemed affiliating university and unitary institutions will be replaced by the term universities, which will essentially be multidisciplinary. This change is also envisaged in NEP, in medical, technical, legal, agriculture universities and unitary institutions. This is where the challenge will come. This is where more clarity is required. And in professional education, the emphasis is on offering holistic multidisciplinary programs. Therefore, there is a need for us to take a relook at medical education, which predominantly is single discipline based. Healthcare education requires to re-envision duration, structure, and design of the role and the roles the graduate will play. Fortunately for us, this has been taken care of in the 2019 graduate medical regulation. There has been a revision or a re-envisionment of the duration, structure, design, curriculum, and clearly defined roles which the graduates will play as we go forward. More emphasis on preventive healthcare and community medicine. This again has been the main focus in the new CBME 2. More important, the next one is important for all of us. Take lead in cutting edge technologies like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, virtual reality, augmented reality, big data, machine learning, 3D machining. These are the technologies of the future, emerging technologies, and there is a need for all of us to take a serious look at them. They are going to only augment the experience. They are only going to make things better for the faculty, the institutions, and the student alike. Therefore, there's a need for us to understand the technology, bring in this technology wherever it is appropriate, especially with regard to selected competencies, with regard to skill-based training that we're going to afford as we go forward. Specific emphasis on genomics, proteomics, biotechnology, nanotechnology, and neurosciences with application in health sciences, environment, and sustainable living. We are seeing, in the last 6 months, we have seen a totally different world, looking more towards genomics, proteomics, developing biotechnology solutions to produce the newer vaccines, looking at nanotechnology to deliver these vaccines, and looking at, various other high-tech, healthcare sciences with applications in health sciences and environment for a sustainable living, which as we go forward. So technology use and integration, as we are looking at it, there is increasing use of technology in education. Medical education will not be an exception. We have to adapt to use of newer technology. Upgradation of digital infrastructure. We have already seen the need. We had to make a rapid change, a sudden change in use of technology. Many of us were underprepared, but today we are better prepared, and tomorrow we need to be far more better prepared with digital infrastructure, newer teaching platforms and tools, creation of quality content. This is something I would lay emphasis on. As we go forward, classroom-based learning will though form a major component. It will be online learning, blended learning, and tech-driven assessment and learning will be the order of the day. We better be prepared for it, and we need to develop our confidence and our level of competence in developing quality content, which will match the delivery platform, which will match the way we are delivering, be it be classroom-based delivery or be it be online or blended mode delivery. Skill labs and virtual labs and training facilities to use technology. This is something which we are already aware of, and more technology will be used in developing skill labs, virtual labs, and other training facilities to make our students acquire the competencies or skills that we are prescribing to them. And increasing use and adoption of AI, AR, VR, machine learning, 3D machining technology. And as I said, I think we also need to think about and look at blended models of learning offerings as we go forward. This is the next reform that we should be looking at. So the most important component, which I felt very important, was catalyzing academic research. Today, there is no escaping from delivery of academics and research. An academician is supposed to be a researcher, and a researcher also an academician in a different, proportions as we look at it. There needs to be a full integration of academics and research. Establishment of National Research Foundation. I thought it's a revolutionary idea with a very large corpus being available. for supporting research in the country to take it to the global standards. The government also looks at facilitating international collaboration, enabling permeation of research culture through higher education industry, higher education institutions. The healthcare institutions will not be an exception. We need to follow all these guidelines and all these directives as they come to us. So just a word about NRF. This will have a National Research Foundation, will have a substantial funding for research. I read somewhere that there will be almost an annual funding of 20,000 crore rupees, which is available for research funding. As has been envisaged, it will have an independent body with rotating board of governors, and no less than our Honorable Prime Minister in one of the meetings has clearly mentioned that the entire distribution of the grants will be merit-based and equitable grants to quality projects. And this will form the major support to research in universities and institutions. And there will be a link which will develop by NRF towards researcher, government institutions for facilitating seamless research activity. And what is most heartening, this was again in the word in the talk of our Honorable Prime Minister, that there will be no discrimination between public and private higher education industry institution, and the entire grant will be entirely merit-based. And this NRF will be over and above the funding from other private public funding agencies like DST, DBT, ICMR, ICAR, UGC, etc. Therefore, there will be humongous, there will be a very large quantum of funding which will be available, and I think all of us need to get prepared towards, as we go forward, towards enhancing our research output to take it to the global standards. Few issues and concerns. The complete alignment of National Medical Commission and other healthcare regulators as prescribed in NEP. The only point which the NEP speaks about it exempts the medical education and the legal education from the ambit of national education policy. However, there is no talk of other healthcare regulators like DCI, Indian Nursing Council, Allied Health Council, various other, Pharmacy Council of India. So all these things form integral component of healthcare delivery system. Therefore, there has to be a complete alignment of all these regulators. We await the implementation plan of national education policy in the near future. Integration and harmonization of all healthcare education regulators. This is very, very critical. We have seen often there's harmonization is less than acceptable. And the important fact is about accreditation and ranking. Healthcare accreditation and ranking, these two crucial issues will play a big role as we go forward. So the accreditations could be for the programs, for the program accreditation, institutional accreditation, individual standard setting accreditation. Therefore, there are myriad of options available in accreditation. And this will drive the future or the quality of medical education or healthcare delivery as we go forward. And there is a need for India to align with global medical education system and trends. So one attempt is at implementing competency-based medical education as it stands today. But the whole the outcome will depend on standardization of the curriculum and training method. Though the curriculum has been standardized, we need to focus more on delivery and the training methods. And what is now, which is troubling to all of us, would be there is no reciprocal recognition of Indian qualifications and foreign qualification vis-a-vis both. So there is a need for us to develop a holistic curriculum which is acceptable to majority of the foreign countries, so that our graduates need not go back and start training all over again. So this is something which needs to be looked at, and I'm sure all the policy makers and our government is focused on this. Therefore, as we go forward, maybe in the next decade, we need to have Indian qualifications which are recognized abroad and foreign qualifications recognized in India, because the medical education would be at least more or less, at least 75% to 80%. There would be mapping of the curriculum, there would be mapping of the delivery portion, there would be mapping of the assessment portion, and therefore all graduates, irrespective of where they graduate from, would have the prerequisites of developing into a first primary care physician. And the next point that perhaps needs further debate would be the proposed next examination, which is supposed to be a national level qualification examination, and also would act as the qualification examination for ranking for the postgraduate admissions. I think it's a very welcome step, but it's very vague as of now. We need to develop this and see where it takes. The government has said that it will be implemented by 2022, but there's a lot needs to be done. How is it going to be implemented for the traditional system vis-a-vis the competency-based medical education, as we are going to see both the system overlapping for some period of time? And also, what would be the nature, what would be the blend of assessment which this next examination would offer, looking at formative evaluation playing a major role in medical education and summative evaluation playing a major role in a traditional form of education. These were some of my thoughts. I thought I would share with you all. Many of you are senior, many of you are aspiring academic administrators. I thought this is something that I would look at. And I once again, I have shared my thoughts, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I have great pleasure in complimenting the organizers of this program. And I wish the program all the very best, that is implementation of CBME in otolaryngology. I wish the trainers and the recipients of this training all the very best. And with great pleasure, I inaugurate this program, and I wish this program all the success. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. I mean, it was the most comprehensive talk with the blending of the national education policy. You have touched some very important chords. Now I open the session to question and answer, and the participants can raise their hands. Yes, Dr. Pratibha Vyas, please unmute yourself. Dr. Pratibha, please ask your question. Dr. Sheenal Kothari, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, sir. Actually, thank you for a complete enlightenment and update on the CBME in medical education. I just had a query that in the current scenario, we feel that implementation of competency-based medical education is more urgent requirement in postgraduate training. So do you think it is advisable to apply this in postgraduate training before we actually apply it in the undergraduate training? And how should we as faculty contribute to this?
Yeah, I would say that I'm in agreement with you, but the things I think both will go parallel, as I see in the Indian context. If you remember, when I said the evolution of CBME, in fact the CBME was implemented for postgraduate medical education in most of the Western countries and other developed countries. However, in our country, there has already the efforts have started towards implementing CBME in postgraduate medical education. But I think the imperative was to begin in undergraduate medical education because the change was imminent. We would have any further delay would have caused us a bit more problem, because we saw that the quality of medical graduates as they came out was a bit little disappointing, and therefore this need was important. And I'm sure that very shortly, in fact, the plan is already on towards implementing the CBME in postgraduate medical education. And at an individual level, as I said, what you can do as a faculty, there is no harm in introducing CBME in select competencies which you feel are most important in an informal way in your postgraduate training. many of us are already doing it if you look at it. But I think you could develop some modules which would incorporate the concept of CBME and deliver it to your postgraduate students while we await the implementation, rather the curriculum planning and implementation of CBME into the postgraduate studies.
Thank you.
Dr. Unnikrishnan Menon.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Dr. Venkatesh.
Yes, sir.
Hi. Hello, sir. I'm a professor in Amrita Hospital, as I already communicated with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It is really, I really feel happy that today invite you for this introductory session. It was really really fantastic session, listening to all the details that you covered in the whole context of the topic. The earlier part of CBME, of course, most of us were aware of because we have been taking classes as part of MEU members and this thing. The latter half, especially associating with the NEP and all that, were really a lot of informative points and eye openers were there for us. One thing which concerns us, like many things in our country, is the matter of uniformity. So, as you said, some infrastructures varies, so many things varies from place to place, from institution to institution. So, how the question is, in CBME now, uniformity becomes a sort of one of the mandated things. You can't escape not having uniformity by in CBME. So, how will this be applied? Will NMC be looking over it? One of the verticals you showed accreditation, and those 4 verticals, one of it will it be looking at uniformity as a prime thing? I'm also asking this because I've seen the differences even in the way in the nodal centers. Now I'm in Kerala, my Kottayam Medical College is my nodal center. I've seen differences in criteria applied or laxity of criteria between various nodal centers. Like Kottayam I've seen to be very strict. So these things, how far the uniformity will be applicable?
Yeah, thank you for your thoughts and thank you for your compliments, Dr. Unnikrishnan. At the outset, I echo your sentiments. I am a little concerned about how we are going to implement the uniform standards across in terms of infrastructure, in terms of quality of academic delivery, in terms of assessment, and in terms of ensuring outcomes which are uniform and standardized across the country, which has a bearing on the future, the next exam that we are looking at. I'm a bit concerned, and I'm sure the National Medical Commission is seized of this. And of course, I'm sure they will be looking at it as a priority area. And one thing which gladdens my heart is, National Medical Commission, unlike the Medical Council of India, many of the people who are there in the 4 verticals are exceptional professionals who are committed to medical education. I'm sure in a period of time, maybe a year or 2. And I'm sure there is also a thought process about central program accreditation. So there will be accreditation. I foresee, I'm not part of this decision making, but I foresee how one can get a program accreditation. When I spoke of accreditation in the later part, perhaps this is one of the things that has to come in, accrediting each of these, competency-based delivery system, assessment system, by small teams which have been trained. They perhaps would visit the institution phase-wise, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, different teams, and look at not as an inspector but as a facilitator, how to make requisite changes to bring in at least 80% conformity with the standards across all the 500 plus medical colleges in the country. I am a little, it's a little worrying fact, but I'm sure solutions will be found as we go forward. I said, that's why I said, the entire assessment of success or otherwise of the program can only be carried out after we have had at least 2 or 3 cycles having been completed. It is if we say that at the end of 1 cycle, if you say, no, it's no good, I don't think I would go with that. We have to make an effort to see that it succeeds, and the success will only come if we identify the gaps, we address the gaps, and strengthen the delivery process and make the program a success. It's not a 1 cycle affair. I'm sure a person like you, many of you would agree with me. We would perhaps require 2 or 3 cycles And this is something we have to learn. We have to publish knowledge research articles on this, and also look at developing strong evidences for or against certain processes, so that we could strengthen the entire delivery process. I am sure that NMC is seized of it, and it is looking at it, and there would be a process which will come across towards standardizing the entire CBME delivery across.
Yeah, yes, thank you, sir.
Dr. Anuja?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Thank you, sir. It was an extremely enlightening session for us, and it was in true sense an integration with the national education policy. Thank you, sir. It was a true, absolutely brightening learning session for us. Sir, I have one question which, as an Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, I would request you to guide us on. Sir, how do we motivate the younger faculty towards this new CBME and new education policy?
Yeah, this is this is a question. Here the leadership has to be taken by the senior and the mid-level faculty, and the technology adoption will happen at the junior faculty. I know that there are drawbacks in this. The faculty will be stressed. Faculty will be required to work more than what is required. The assessment protocols, the maintenance of documentation, the formative assessments, all of these going to be taxing. NMC in its own right has made this small change in terms of authorizing additional faculty, but that perhaps may not be adequate. There's a need for us to find ways of how do we augment the faculty resources. One way I would look at would be to associate our postgraduate students also into the process to begin with, and take their help, not in terms of I'm majorly looking at it in terms of supervision and in terms of assisting people in acquiring skills, overlooking them, supervised assistance as we call it. This is something that we can do. And as far as motivation of the faculty is concerned, there is a need for internalization amongst the faculty. Firstly, there has to be an acceptance that this is a change that whether we like it or not, we'd have to take it forward. So there's no question of turning back on this and getting back to a conventional mode of medical education. So this is something that has to be understood. And this is something the senior leadership of the institution will have to repeatedly speak to the people, maybe somewhere bring along certain incentives, and look at, genuinely stretched departments need to be, supported in that fashion. It's not an easy solution, madam. As a Vice Chancellor, I would say that it's not an easy solution. You need to balance multiple, variables in ensuring that there is a there's a level of confidence in what we deliver as we go forward. So I would say that it takes time, to just we've not even completed phase 1, to declare anything, to offer any comment on this would be a little difficult. So any internalization will take a little time. Most important thing for the change to happen is acceptance that the change is inevitable, the change is required. If we look at change as a positive transformation, then perhaps the adoption and the internalization will be faster. We could little bit of senior leadership will have to take a little call on this, perhaps catch up, speak, and support understand also the concerns. It is not about ordering, it's about working together as a team. It's not about saying you will do this job, let us do this job would be a better option as we go forward.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes,
I mean, it is said that the role of a university is making two intelligent people shake hands with each other. So can we look into the concept of a meta university nationally?
This is what is the actually, if you look at it, it's a nice, it's a wonderful concept. I endorse it. The more you meet, more you talk, more you I have personally I have felt that this is the major focus of the new national education policy, that the universities need to talk to each other, the faculty need to work towards each other. There has to be interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, connections. And that's why I said, this holistic development revolves around that you need to create that kind of an ecosystem or an environment where each one, more you talk, better you become, more you connect, It's like CNS, more connections are established, more and more robust the network becomes. I'm fully with you, and I think we will move towards this as we go forward. I'm an eternal optimist, and I'm sure this is where we are moving at. I'm a little excited about the nomenclature of the universities with the NEP proposes that research intensive and also talks about teaching intensive and also about standalone degree awarding institution, autonomous degree awarding institution. It's a good concept. It has worked in the Western world. We need to make it happen out here. The other thing which is which the national policy, the new national policy suggests is about internationalization, something which I did not touch upon, because at the current moment there's hardly any scope for internationalization in medical education, but there is a tremendous scope for internationalization as we go forward in terms of student exchange, faculty exchange, in terms of mobility, in terms of joint grant writing, in terms of joint research and publication. The opportunities are humongous, and I'm sure at the highest level the universities can play a big role towards enhancing and making these things happen. I agree with you, sir. This is something which is actually should be one of the major objectives as we go forward.
Thank you, sir. So, any more hands? Please raise your hand.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, sir. Sir,
Good
I am
evening.
from Adani Medical. Yes, sir, I am from Adani Medical College, Bhuj.
Yes,
sir,
sir.
in the new
Dr.
competency-based medical
Khilnani.
education curriculum.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I'm Dr. Ajit Khilnani from ENT Department of Medical College, Bhuj, Gujarat, sir.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, in the new CBME, that is competency-based curriculum, we see that there more emphasis has been put on the development of the student skills. So even
Yes.
the teaching hours have been reduced, the didactic lectures and more small group discussions have been included.
Yes.
So, sir, I just wanted to know that during this lockdown period, we almost completed the knowledge part of the syllabus. But what about teaching skills online? Sir, any experience you would like to share with us, sir?
This is actually a very critical part. The online skills teaching. It's at best it could be a demonstration. So therefore,
Yes,
for the students to get the hands-on, it's a very difficult thing on the online process, except in certain in computer sciences where there are virtual programming or virtual labs are available. We have still not developed to that extent as to develop a VR AR based virtual lab where students can have an hands-on. That perhaps would happen in future. But as a medical student, I don't think there is no escape other than to acquire the skills, putting your hands on and making your hands dirty, getting to know the things, talking. It's not about just about skill. It's about integrating your knowledge, skills, and attitude towards holistic development of that particular process. There's no escaping, sir. We have to now compress, at least for this batch, or maybe this next batch also, where we see that there would be a shortened amount of time which is available for delivery of phase 1, 2, or 3. There has to be more emphasis on skill training when they return back to campus. Enough knowledge has been given by way of online education. There is no escaping about delivery of skills without a hands-on training. The technology will only help to an extent, but it cannot replace the live situations as we see, as our laboratory situation as we go forward. In fact, in our university, we have got all the students back on campus, especially the final year students of all disciplines. They are back on campus. The first year students of all disciplines are about to come back, and those students are to graduate to the next phase. Their practical laboratory classes, their skill enhancement classes are all going on full swing. And I'm very happy to say that despite the COVID, we close to have 90% and above students back on campus for these batches. So there is something that I don't see that the online education replacing the training which is required to acquire the skill at the current moment.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Tara. Can you unmute yourself, Dr. Tara? She has written a question: how hampering is the current economic situation in guiding change towards CBME?
I didn't get Dr. Bedi. Can you repeat the question again?
She is asked how hampering is the current economic situation in guiding change towards CBME.
Yes, yes. I know there is an economic value towards investment that is required towards enabling institutions to and departments to be ready for the competency-based medical education delivery. If you look at it, there would be a bit of a damp now, as I see, because resources have been directed towards, most of it has been directed towards tackling of the COVID situation, both in the public and in the other. But I think as medical schools, there is no escaping. We have to give our students the best. So we have to find resources. We have to reallocate resources. We have to prioritize resources and plan resources availability towards making this a success. It would be based on how the administration and the support system within an institution work. At least in Mahe, I can assure you that we have provided adequate resources for this particular aspect.
Dr. Shivaraman Ganeshan.
Sir, very good evening. Very good evening, sir. I have I heard a lot of things about policy making from your webinar. I'm very thankful for that. So I have a very basic thing. As a very senior faculty in our ENT, I would request, if I may request you, can you just list out some of the basic competencies that are expected out of the medical undergraduate? What would be your personal choices of basic competencies that are expected out of a undergraduate?
I would, this is a very difficult question to answer in a session like this. But
Yes,
as we see, if you look at the phase 2 competencies, been very clearly defined, clearly listed out. What are those competencies that we need? More or less, I'm in agreement with them. But in general terms, I would look at, we need to look at the graduate outcomes in terms of ENT. Undergraduate or graduate who comes out of the medical institution should be able to identify commonly occurring diseases in the community, be able to treat commonly occurring diseases, and identify when it is required to be, referred to a higher center. And timely reference is something that is important. He should also be able to identify deafness, childhood deafness at the earliest. He should be able to identify and help these children towards seeking help at higher levels. And also be able to diagnose or suspect malignancies of the head and neck region, which really are the scourge of our nation. And also look at preventable diseases in head and neck and in ENT, and have a community ENT in his mind. Like he should be able to do a good school survey, school health survey. So I think a number of competencies that are prescribed. Basically, I would look at him be able to do a comprehensive ENT examination, less of intervention, more and more of diagnosis and primary care in terms of ENT, and then more importantly, refer their patients towards a competent ENT surgeon for the next level of care.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was an excellent eye-opener for me, at least. Thank you. You gave a very broad spectrum and a very. I take it from you that they have to be more of diagnosis, less of intervention. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Shinal Kothari.
Yes, sir. So I have one more question, sir. Like
Yes,
we
ma'am.
normally face this problem of getting temporal bones from the anatomy department.
Yes, ma'am.
So like how can we sort it out, sir? Because once the cadaver has been completely used for the training, the temporal bone, they usually do not use it and we can use them. But somehow all of us face this resistance to get it from the Department of Anatomy. Sir,
could
any
have an
ideas on that?
Yeah, I think it's especially in medical colleges, it should not become a problem, because as we see that at the end of each of these terms, you have around 8 to 10 cadavers which are available, which have been fully used up. And to harvest temporal bone from them should not be a major problem. It could be an institutional decision given to the Department of Anatomy, rather than burying the completely used body. We could harvest the temporal bone, and that is something that you can do. In fact, you could do a lot with the body as far as ENT practices are concerned, especially for the postgraduate medical. If you look at the current, the use of dissections in anatomy, most of it has now written down to demonstrations. Less of it is on ability for the student to dissect and demonstrate. Therefore, actually, I personally feel that every body should be used to its fullest for improving knowledge and skills, and an institutional policy to this nature would be of big benefit. In fact, in my long tenure at AFMC, I never had a problem of temporal bones, because we had a very good system where after the anatomy department felt that we have done with the body, we would go and harvest the temporal bones and use it for our postgraduate training. This has to be an institutional decision, madam.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Dr. P. Sudhakar.
Sir, I am Dr. Sudhakar from Geetham Medical College, Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh. Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. Good evening to you.
Sir, traditionally, we are all the products of the knowledge-based medical education, where we have developed all these competencies, what you are enlisting. See, are we neglecting the knowledge base by focusing more on the competency base? See, knowledge, without knowledge, you don't get the competency. So without competency, learning the knowledge is a waste. How to balance those two things now?
This is exactly the moot point, sir. The important thing is to recognize what are those competencies which are important, and what is the knowledge required before understanding. It's which comes first. It's a harmonization of the domains that is very important. It is not only the knowledge and skills; it's also the attitude that we looked at, and the communication skills one needs. So I think predominantly, if you look at the way we were examined, or we were examining students, you will see that much of it depends upon recall, recollection, and enumerate and describe, this kind of thing. So there is a need for us to have a change in the thought process. We need to become more and more process centric. That means the knowledge which is required to acquire that particular skill, and also demonstration of the skill should achieve primacy in our medical education. I'm not saying knowledge is not required. Knowledge is absolutely required, but we don't expect. In fact, if you look at today's graduates who are undergoing the conventional medical education, they would know so many things which literally are not required. So it is important that we recognize must know, need to know, and better if you know. If you identify your knowledge in that level, I'm sure we will be able to aid the students in a better fashion. As an assessor too, we need to be very clear. We need to look at, instead of knowing, instead of assessing a student about what he knows, we need to question ourselves what he needs to know, and then frame our assessment in that regard. And importantly, even the domain of skill, there is a need for underlying knowledge. Therefore, it is again left to us, how are we going to structure our teaching learning methods? How are we going to fit in assessment in that? I think to that end, because the earlier system never had a prescribed competency, it was more nebulous what we wanted to assess. Today we have, that the competencies are predetermined. The TL, the objectives of the competencies are predetermined. The outcomes are predetermined. Then your teaching learning methods are also predetermined. Therefore, we are that much more better off in the system. But also, what is also important in the new system also gives the student enough opportunity to go beyond what is being taught about. lot of self-learning, self-directed learning, lot of learning resources need to be given to him. Online learning is available to him. Library resources are available. So we are not denying anybody knowledge, but then we are only looking at focused knowledge, which will translate into acquiring skills which are life skills which are required to practice as a primary care physician.
Are we neglecting some part of theory by concentrating on the competencies?
I think sir's net connection is a bit slow.
Yes, yeah, I think it's gone.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I'll just start the next part. Yes. Okay. 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 Dr. Anuja, would you like to start the? Sir is will take some time. Dr. Anuja.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. I can.
Yeah.
I'm back on the this thing. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
Please. Yes.
Yes. So I don't think there are any more questions. Dr. Anuja, would you like to? Yeah, Dr. Hemlata. There is one more hand. Dr. Hemlata Katayar. Please unmute yourself.
So good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I'm from an undergraduate college where we are having about 100 students.
Yes.
So do you have in your mind what is the ideal or an optimal student-teacher ratio to enforce all this CBME in a proper fashion? Because we are always talking about how to implement. I have not seen the discussion anywhere, because when I joined a medical college in 2007, in ENT department, we used to have 7 faculty. Now for 100 people, as far as the NMC is concerned, we just need 4.
Yeah.
So is there any, I mean, anything in your mind which you think is an ideal or an optimal student-teacher ratio to enforce this?
So, if you're looking at a batch of, you look at 25 students coming to you at any given time in terms of delivery of skills and other things, is that what is your batch strength in your college?
It may be more, sir. Sometimes it's around 30.
30.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would optimally look at around 5 faculty to be able to adequately done.
Actually, as per the NMC stipulation, we have 2 residents and 3 faculty.
Yeah, I think that would be an ideal situation to have, so that you have a small group. In fact, if you have one more, if your institution can provide you one more, it will be ideal, this thing. But otherwise, the minimum I would see that 5 would be required for a batch of 25 to 30 students at any given time.
I think that is a very good suggestion, sir. I would suggest that the policy makers who are there here, who can influence the policy makers, should concentrate on that point, so that we'll do it in a proper fashion.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sure, these, please remember that these are all things in the making. We will learn as we go forward.
Yeah, I understood that. Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Yes. There are no more hands. So, Dr. Anuja, would you like to say something?
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, would you, Sanjay sir, would you like us to show the slides for the faculty for the upcoming program, or should we do? Pardon, sir?
Yes, you can take a few minutes for that.
Sir, could you please share the slides from which we had given you, sir, because from your end, sir?
You want me to share the slides?
I have made you the presenter. No,
sir, I was yes, sir.
I made you the presenter. I made you the presenter. You share slide now.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm having a little problem in sharing the screen. Could you please help me and share the particular presentation so we could introduce everybody?
Okay, so it will take me some time. Actually, it is
Sir, we
in my
could do it
mobile. Next time.
So maybe, sir, we would do it next week before Dr. Unikrishnan starts the presentation.
Yes.
Can I take
Okay.
the slides off my screen, if it's all right? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So with this, thank you, sir, once again on behalf of all the ENT fraternity and Dr. Unikrishnan. Would you like to thank, sir?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes. So yeah, I still remember that day. I think it was 2 weeks back. I think when we were Dr. Sanjay, Dr. Anuja, and myself were discussing about whom to invite, and then it was Dr. Anuja who pointed out this name, and I remember then looking up your names. I remember after seeing all the credentials, I must say it. Thanks, guilt not aware of you, sir, because I suppose are the usual national conference circuits and also I was amazed to know I was really feeling shameful and slightly guilty that I was not aware of you, sir, being such a prolific ENT surgeon and being in MEU. So yes, it was really a great decision that we took on that day, and I really take the opportunity to thank Dr. Venkatesh for being kind enough to spare his time and share his knowledge and his wishes in this whole project, which has been envisaged by Dr. Sanjay Bedi. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much. You would not mind if we sort of trouble you once in a while with clearing out some doubts that may arise as the program goes along.
No problem. And, thank you very much to you and to Dr. Bedi for inviting me for this program. I've really enjoyed the interactions. And if I can be of any service at any time, and please feel free to connect with me.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all the participants who have logged in today, and I hope it must have been a real beneficial session to all of you. And we hope to take this forward with introductory sessions in some of the topics which Dr. Anuja will describe either today or in the next slide, next time. So thank you, and thank you, Dr. Sanjay Bedi, for organizing this.
Sir, yeah. May I please add one thing?
Yes. Yeah.
Sir, may I please add something?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir. Actually, yes, sir. Actually, it's an honor for me to be a Mahi Fellow also. I am doing my fellowship, sir, from the batch 2020 from the Mahi FAMA. And that was when I saw you and I was so inspired. So we thought that we would inaugurate our program by Sanjay Bedi, sir, with your inaugural session. Thank you very much, sir, for please spending time and inspiring us to go to higher heights. Thank you very much, sir.
And thank you. Pleasure is entirely mine, and I wish you all the very best and look forward to meeting you when you're on campus next.
Thank you so much, sir. It's an honor.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Bedi, Dr. Unikrishnan, and all the participants. It was a pleasure being with you all this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you, sir.
Good.